Everyone was in it was a conversation.
Or the screen.
Yeah, or the dad.
If I fell off my phone.
You completed it.
I just
I'm sure you know most of these. So
I'm really the next time I've been dealing. I finished some. I keep forgetting. I'm just looking at one you had a coffee, whatever the heck.
Oh, and that's magnifique.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll start. Tonight we'll do the message first, and then we'll go into worship. So like that, we don't have to. Yeah.
People leaving.
All right. All right. So this month's message is entitled, or at least tonight is called "What a Lovely Day," and it's good because it wasn't raining today, so it's actually kind of like fitting. But that's not where the line comes from. The line actually comes from, I was watching Mad Max, which, no, like hear me out guys. This has to do with our entire message. So I'll get into that because it's kind of important. But Mad Max won 6 Oscars or whatever. It's kind of really, really great.
What is Mad Max?
Oh, no, but they won 6 Academy Awards, and it's a post-apocalyptic movie. Alright, so What a Lovely Day. That's a line from the last Mad Max movie that came out, and so just to put you in context, the line is uttered by one of our main characters, Nux, which is this slave kind of type guy. And basically, without going into detail, they worship this kind of weird figure, and from that they believe in this heaven called Valhalla, which is like if you die as a warrior, then you're going to be with all those other warrior types people. Now you're like, what does this have to do with Christianity whatsoever? Bear with me. So, oh, that's exactly what I wrote. Great. Okay, so here are just a few of his quotes that are in the movie. I think you can find them like in a part online that's just him. And here's what a few things he says. So, if I'm going to die, I'm going to die historic on the Fury Road, which is this road where a bunch of people die. Then he says, I live, I die, I live again. Now you might be getting how it's starting to relate to Christianity. Or, here's this conversation he has with this other guy. He looked me straight in the eye. He looked at me. And then the guy's like, no, he was just scanning the horizon, didn't care about you. No, I'm telling you. He looked at me. And I'm awaited in Valhalla. Now, that kind of devotion that he has, that's kind of where I want to take us. Because I divided this message in like 5 points, and just to make it really simple, but the devotion that we have in life, that we're going to have in our Christian walk, has to be more about being okay with going all out for Jesus, and then it's like, it's cool, it's fine if I die, but if I die, I'm going to die living for Christ. And yeah. Oh man, it's so tired. Okay, so point number 1, what do we need to know? So, we need to know that we have to be fearlessly living for God in every aspect of our lives, and that goes for a community like us. And yeah, so that's where kind of that idea of like, no, I live, I die, I live again. And I think we have to wake up in the morning like, no, forget about it. You know, I'm going to be living for Christ today, wherever it brings me, or whatever it takes me. So, why do we need to know that we should be fearlessly living out for Christ? Well, that's where we're heading at as a community. I want us to take this zeal that we have, this crazy passion, and to take it as, like, we need full communion with Christ. And as you can see in the Bible, like, we see that all the time. We see the apostles that are, you know, just all, they get together as a family and that they pray, and you see that anointing that just falls down right on the people. And you can see their ministry change accordingly. And so what do we need to do? Well, we need to step out of our comfort zone. I feel like we bring that up all the time, that we need to step out of our comfort zone, but we really have to do it. It's really simple to be like, oh, you know what? It's done. I felt kind of off. I didn't feel super like, I was still in my comfort zone, still had one foot. But here's the thing. The first thing Jesus says to his apostles before they become his apostles, the first thing he ever says to them is follow me. They're in a boat, they're fishing, or at least getting the boat ready, and he says, follow me. Now, we can take that as, I think that's what we should think about, right? Because the apostles didn't just say, all right, get out of the boat and start high-fiving each other about like, this was great, we got out of the boat. And they keep high-fiving each other, and they're like, do you think he wanted us to like follow him for real? It's like, no, man, he just wanted us out of the boat. No. They followed him, and that's what they did. So Jesus said, follow me, and they went. It was a simple command. I think that's, we call the Great Commission, go out and make disciples. But that's the first thing Jesus ever says is to follow him. And the only way that we can follow him is actually if we look into what he says and what he taught us. And I think it's a shame that often we fall back down on our theology and think of, like, let's just look at all these things that our churches say that we should be doing, and let's look at what Jesus says that we should be doing, and let's actually do it. Which seems kind of like a safe thing to do in like this small context, but when we think that people, when they heard get up, like take your cross and walk, that was the end. I think we often mistaken the idea of, like, we see the symbol of a cross and people just wear it kind of in cool ways, like it's like, oh, look at my cross, it's like a necklace and whatnot. But it's a symbol of death. I feel like often in the church we've associated it with a symbol of resurrection, but it's not. It's a symbol of death. And it's not a light thing. Like, if Jesus would have died on, like, people bring this example up all the time. If he would have died on an electric chair, we would all have electric chairs around our necks. Like, it's a crazy concept, but you have to know that it's his resurrection that, that's also important. It's not just, like, the symbol of his death is a symbol of what we're going to go through as on our walk. That's what we have to know, that by taking up our cross, it means that we're going to die to ourselves and that we're going to live a Christian life, that we're going to be like Christ. And I think that's an extremely scary thought. So we have to get out of our comfort zones, and there's this verse in 2 Corinthians, if anyone's taking notes. 2 Corinthians 12:10. Is it? 9 and 10, which they're kind of popular verses, but they kind of made a lot of sense to me lately as I've been dealing with such things as depression and taking the steps to actually get better. And it says this, it's Paul who speaks in this part. He says, "But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in my weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong." And just let that sink in for a bit. When I'm weak, I'm strong. That's completely opposite of what our society is telling us. Like, we go in schools and it's like, well, if you're weak, you're weak. Because you're relying on, like, the second we start relying on ourselves, we're really weak. Because it's just us. Like, we're going to fall and whatever, and it's like, well, there I am, weak. But Paul tells us that it's the opposite, that when we've taken up our cross and that we're following Christ, then when we're weak and we're at our lowest, God just picks us up. And he just works in our lives. And I spent the week praying for God to just move in my life, and it was crazy. Like last night, I I bring it up because I'm still flabbergasted at how crazy it went. I have never felt like I hadn't felt such an embrace from Christ in so long. Like we were doing Med by Love, which we'll do again tonight, but we were doing that song and I just had that overwhelming feeling of being wrapped by God. And I think that's the greatest thing about, that's what is going to change our communities around us, and that's what's going to change the people in our schools and the people that we talk to. Because I'm sure several of you, or at least a few of you, have come to know Christ through other people who had known Christ. Like, the best testimony is when you bring an addict and like an ex-addict in front of an addict, and you can see that person's like, well, you know, can Jesus save me? Yes, he can. Why? Because he saved me. And that's something that I've come to understand. It's like, okay, no, what God did in my life isn't just for me. God, it wasn't this magical thing and God was like, hey, good job, Mick. Pat on the back and it's like, you go now. This was just for you. No, because if God was able to come down and grab me from the pit and pull me out, then he can do that for any one of us. And he will. And I think it's really important that we just, go into it and, go and see people and love them. So, I didn't get the verse out for that one. Whatever. But in the book of Acts, which is just telling you, if you guys are ever going to start a church, look in the book of Acts. That's church. You can't see it any clearer than that. I think it's Acts 2 or 3. If someone's more knowledgeable than me, just correct me. But it says that the apostles went up to the upper room. So think of kind of this thing, and they came upstairs and they started praying with each other, praying for each other, praying for the church, and they kept praying constantly, daily, and weekly, monthly, yearly, and they would just pray. And that moment of prayer and that devotion that they've shown to each other and to God showed in their ministry. And everyone, they were changing lives. That's not because they were thinking that, oh no, well, we kind of know what to do. Jesus kind of told us, so we're just going to do our own thing and try to change people. No, they relied directly on God. And by relying on God, God was working firsthand. God wasn't trying to work across the thorny grounds that, the thorny soil that you were pulling up. That's not, God was just like, all right, this is what I'll do. And last night when we were having worship, God just lifted that up, and I was like, man, thank you, Jesus. And I was closing up the church and just rejoicing at how amazing God was. And we truly do have a glorious God and a wonderful God, and I'll even say an awesome God, even though we've taken all meaning away from that word. But I was just in awe, and I'm still puffy about it. All right, what's the other point? Oh, well, why do we need it? Because we're here to heal the world. We need to be active. We need to be in each other's lives so that we can be in other people's lives. Eventually, I'd really love that we all kind of, we have our coffee nights every once in a while. We started last month to have our coffee nights, and they'll be at different places and whatnot, but it'd be just so great if all of us were kind of doing that. If everyone was kind of like, all right, I'm going to grab, not all of us drink coffee, obviously. Most do. But those who don't, whatever, but okay, I'm just going to invite a few friends over, and we're just going to have fellowship. And not necessarily just Christian people. Sometimes it has nothing to do with inviting Christians. It just has to do with loving people. And that's what we're called to do. And it's really a funny story that I'm probably going to laugh and none of you are, but I I was in the in our techniques at like our club room at school, and I was just sitting there working on. It's a while back, but I was working on what songs we were going to do and putting chords accordingly to each song, and I just felt God was like, "Hey, you should invite people." I was like, "What? Inviting people?" But it was so clear, and I just knew that I had. So I sent, sorry for pointing you out, but Christina an invite, and same for Catherine, and I was like, "Yeah, I don't know where you're at spiritually, but you are more than welcome to join us, like in small Christian event, whatever. There's food." Like, you'll always win people with food, but yeah. And it's just that first step. Like, what's the worst that's gonna happen? No? Okay. I guess you don't want hot dogs. You know? But it's like, what? But yeah, so we're here to heal, and in other countries we have like people. I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but everyone kind of highlights different parts of their Bibles. But in the elsewhere in the world, even culturally, they highlight different passages. You have places in the world, like here, we'll highlight a lot of like, oh, you have to be born again, you have to do this and what, which isn't wrong. But other places in the world, they'll be highlighting, sell all your possessions and follow Christ, and they'll rejoice about that just as much as we rejoice about being born again and following Christ. So I think, but they're ready. People are ready to die for their faith, and you see that in other religions too, right? Because even though maybe sometimes it misrepresents their religion 100%, but these people are willing to like blow themselves up for their faith. And I'm not saying that's what we should do, but that's a kind of dedication that is taken, that is needed in the kingdom. That we would be willing to put our lives out there, to be completely bare, so that God can just completely work through us. I did the boats. Oh yeah, sorry. I have too many boat stories. But, so, if you're kind of like worried about stuff happening, you have to understand that faith and church, it's kind of like a boat. A boat doesn't sink because it's on the water. It sinks because there's water in the boat. And if we go back to the church part, a church or a community of believers doesn't like sink or like disperse, whatever that word is. So disperse. It doesn't happen if the world is not in their midst. So if we rely on this, and this is really what we're doing, then this stays afloat. And we as a community stay afloat. But if we're like, oh, we need more smoke machines. Yeah. More techno music.
Glow sticks.
Yeah. No, glow sticks, it's fun. It's nice to have fun. But if we're basing our Christianity on like, hey, let's have more hula hoops. And it's like, what? Why do we need hula hoops? Where in the Bible do they say, thou shalt be saved by hula hoops? If you can hold a hula hoop 20 times, then thou shalt enter the kingdom of God. And I was like, what? But no.
So easy.
So easy?
Hula hoops? I don't know.
Oh man, I've never hula hooped. I've hula hooped. But yes, all right. Let's move away from that. So, how do we make it? Oh, that rhyme was for me. Okay, so how do I make it memorable for you? That's what we have to do. Well, we're going to die living for Christ, and this is not some weird suicide pact, but we're going to die living for Christ. That's how we're going to. Yeah, the Kool-Aid is all over there. No, but so what we're going to do, we're going to wake up in the morning with that attitude of, no, I'm going to put my life down so that I'd be at God's disposition for the entire time, because I'm awaited in heaven. And in the following months, we'll try to discuss more about identity and how that how the enemy uses the exact same tricks through the entire Bible. But I want us to, we're going to be with that attitude of no, we're awaited in heaven. We're children of God, and that's our identity. We're out from the pit, and that's it. There's no, he says, she says. It's all, we're children of God. And we're just going to keep going forward. And we're going to be loving our communities. We're going to be feeding the homeless, whatever it takes. Not to look good, but to be Christ-like. So, we're going to enter into worship about now, and we kind of have two choices when it comes to worship. We can either just sing the songs like they're written, or like they're any other pop songs on the radio, or we can lift up our praises to Jesus, and we could focus on Him and move aside everything that, everyone else, and just kind of it's me and God right now, and there's nothing else. And I was so glad to be able to do that last night. Because so often, as a musician, I tend to focus on performance and not as much on presence. And to be able to block everything out and to just show God how much I love Him. Man, that was great. So, I kind of pray that tonight, the words that we're going to sing are going to be an extension of our prayers, and I've purposefully chosen mostly songs that we wrote, because that's exactly what they are. If you relate to some of that stuff, it makes sense, because they're written with our community in mind. It's not just broad general statements, Christianese, like last time we brought a new song and Jeff was like, I feel like this is 27 songs put together. This is just...
It was weird.
But yeah, and that's not what we want it to be an extension of our prayers, so that's what we're going to do. So we're going to ignore our surroundings, and we're just going to bring it all to God. So whatever you're dealing with, we're just going to, it's all down. We're bringing it to God, and it's if you want to pray with someone, do it. If you need prayer, then, I don't know, come up or something, and we'll pray. Someone will figure out that you need prayer, and we'll pray for you. If you're too shy or whatever, we'll just pray. And, yeah. And this is kind of a play on that verse, but for me and my community, we're going to worship the Lord. So, exactly. So for me and my house, which is my community, this will, yeah. All right? Let's do this. So we'll push, just throw a few chairs out, maybe 4, 5.
The first row.
The first row and one chair in the back. Since we're going to be standing, or some will sit, some will whatever.
Oh, bye, Maddie. Bye, bye.